Welcome to the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nethu.
Great to be here.
Today, we're embarking on what I think is a really fascinating deep dive. We're tackling one of the most complex, most talked about, and yet, honestly, often most confusing phenomena in human endeavor. Leadership itself.
Yeah, leadership, it's everywhere, isn't it? Books, talks, debates.
Exactly. It's a topic that has graced countless books, spurred endless debates, and, well, it just keeps evolving. Our core source material for this deep dive, a paper by Benmira and Agboola from 2021, it captures this enigma perfectly. They note that leadership continues to generate, and I quote, captivating and confusing debate.
That quote really hits the nail on the head. Captivating and confusing.
Right. And they even quote the legendary leadership thinker Warren Bennis, who famously remarked that leadership is the most studied and least understood topic of any amorology in the social sciences.
You're absolutely right. It's almost comical, how many brilliant minds have tried to pin down exactly what leadership is. I mean, think about it.
Go on.
Well, one researcher back in 1950, Stogdill, called it an influencing process aimed at goal achievement. Simple enough, maybe.
Okay.
But then others, like Kouzes and Posner later, described it more poetically as the art of mobilizing others to want to struggle for the shared aspirations.
The art. That's different.
And then you've got Maxwell, who just boiled it down to simply influence, so you see the range.
Wow, yeah. From process to art to just influence.
Exactly. And what this tells us is that leadership isn't some neat, easily definable box. It's more like a sprawling, shifting landscape. That's precisely why it's so captivating and, yeah, often confusing.
And it's why digging into how our understanding has evolved over time is so important, right?
Absolutely critical.
And part of that complexity, I think, often involves that subtle but crucial distinction between leaders, the visionaries, the strategists and managers, the ones who monitor and control day-to-day stuff.
That leader versus manager debate. Yeah, that's a classic one.
Some research argues they have distinctly separate roles, but then others assert that leadership and management are complementary, maybe two sides of the same coin.
And that separating them in practice would be incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible sometimes.
Exactly. So today, our mission is to journey through this historical evolution of leadership theories. It's like watching a complex puzzle slowly reveal itself piece by piece. We'll explore the four main eras outlined in that paper by Benmira and Agboola: the trait, behavioral, situational, and the new leadership eras.
It's a great roadmap through the history of this thinking.
Get ready, everyone listening, to gain a shortcut to being well-informed on this pivotal subject. Hopefully it helps you understand not just what leaders do, but maybe get a glimpse into why they do it, based on these evolving ideas. Attribute theories. The early focus on innate qualities, 1840s, 1940s. Okay, let's unpack this and start right at the beginning. The very first phase of formal leadership theory, broadly known as the attribute theories. This initial phase, mainly spanning the 19th and early 20th centuries. It was profoundly shaped by a focus on the innate characteristics of a leader. That's what our source paper highlights.
Right, innate characteristics. It was less about what leaders did or what they learned, and much more about who they were, fundamentally. You have to think about the time, too.
Yeah, the historical context is key, isn't it? Imagine a time when societal structures were often much more rigid. You had this strong belief in, well, inherent superiority, maybe even divine right in some cases.
Exactly. And this era of leadership thinking perfectly reflects that mindset. The fundamental belief back then was that leaders were not made or trained. They were quite simply born. Born with a preordained destiny to lead.
Wow. Destiny, that's a strong word.
It is. This theory basically suggested that only a very rare few individuals possess these unique inherent qualities, almost by divine design, as the thinking went, that destined them for greatness. It was a deeply deterministic view of leadership.
So leadership was fate, not effort or education or even circumstance?
Pretty much. It implied a certain exclusivity, didn't it? Like a natural aristocracy of leadership, if you will. Some people were just seen as having the right stuff from birth.
So if they believe leaders were just born, who were they looking at? I mean, who became the poster children for this whole great man idea?
Yeah.
What did their lives supposedly tell us?
Well, the source mentions some pretty monumental historical figures: Julius Caesar, Mahatma Gandhi, Abraham Lincoln, Napoleon Bonaparte. These are the kinds of people they pointed to.
Okay, heavy hitters. What made them natural-born leaders in the eyes of this theory? How are their actions interpreted?
They were seen as the archetypes, really. They were perceived as having this intrinsic, almost magical ability to command, to inspire, and crucially, to achieve these monumental feats.
Like Caesar.
Take Julius Caesar, yeah. His military genius, his audacity, like crossing the Rubicon, his ability to rally legions and unify huge territories. All that was attributed to something within him from birth, not necessarily years of training or strategic thinking.
And Napoleon. Similar idea.
Very similar. Napoleon Bonaparte, his strategic brilliance, that charisma that captivated an entire empire, inspiring such unwavering loyalty even when things looked impossible. These were seen as expressions of an inherent rather than an acquired capacity for leadership.
It wasn't just military leaders, though. You mentioned Gandhi.
Right, and that's important. Someone like Mahatma Gandhi. His profound moral authority, his incredible ability to mobilize millions through nonviolent resistance to achieve independence for India. These weren't typically seen back then as skills he painstakingly developed over time.
And they're like,
More like reflections of an inner unyielding spirit, something innate. And similarly with Abraham Lincoln, his wisdom, that unwavering resolve during the American Civil War, his ability to hold a fractured nation together, these qualities were perceived as intrinsic expressions of an extraordinary, maybe even superhuman capacity for leadership.
their accomplishments were just so grand, so history-defining.
Exactly. The popular perception was that only someone with a unique, preordained set of qualities could possibly have achieved them. It really reinforced that idea that these individuals were just born different, born to lead. It was, a very romantic view looking back. Maybe a bit limiting, too.
It definitely sounds compelling, almost romanticized, doesn't it? This notion of a single heroic individual just shaping history through sheer force of will or innate gifts. But yeah, you mentioned the limitations. It certainly has them.
Oh, absolutely.
The Great Man theory, it's often critiqued, isn't it, for its lack of scientific basis, its tendency to oversimplify incredibly complex historical events.
And its convenient disregard for all the other factors. Environmental factors, huge socio-political movements, the contributions of countless others.
Or even just the sheer hard work and sacrifices these leaders undoubtedly made. It's like saying a top athlete was just born great and completely ignoring the decades of relentless training, the diet, the mental fortitude.
Precisely. It's a very incomplete picture. While it was immensely influential for its time, and maybe it satisfied a human need to believe in these heroic figures, the theory was ultimately far too narrow, too simplistic.
It couldn't really explain leaders who emerged from humble beginnings, could it? Or how leadership roles often shift based on challenges.
No, it couldn't. And it completely overlooked the role of followers. Were they just passive clay being molded by the great man? That doesn't seem right.
So its inability to explain the rise of, let's say, ordinary people to extraordinary leadership or the influence of broader societal forces,
Yeah.
that paved the way for something more.
Exactly. It forced researchers to start looking for more quantifiable aspects, things that could actually be studied, measured, and maybe even replicated, moving beyond that almost mystical notion of divine design.
And that search for more quantifiable aspects leads us nicely into the next step in this evolution. Trait theory. This gained prominence, in the 1930s and 1940s?
That's right. Trait theory evolved from the great man concept, but it introduced a really crucial refinement, the idea that leaders could be born or made.
Ah, or made. That's a big shift.
Huge. It acknowledged that perhaps leadership wasn't just fate. It could potentially be acquired through training and practice. It was, you could say, a glimmer of hope for anyone aspiring to lead, not just those supposedly born to it.
So the focus changed.
It became much more pragmatic. The aim of researchers now was to identify a consistent set of traits, things encompassing mental abilities, social skills, even physical characteristics that seem to correlate with leadership effectiveness.
They were looking for the secret formula.
Kind of. Imagine the excitement in academic circles back then. If they could discover that possessing traits X, Y, and Z guaranteed you'd be an effective leader. Think of the implications for selecting people, for training programs, maybe even for national policy.
So what kinds of traits were they looking at?
All sorts. Things like intelligence, self-confidence, determination, integrity, charisma. Even physical attributes like height or assertiveness were sometimes considered. They were basically trying to create the definitive leadership checklist.
Despite all those, rigorous efforts, the research tells a different story, doesn't it? By 1950, our source says they hadn't produced a consistent, universal set of traits, which led to the theory's abandonment, at least in its original form.
Yeah, that must have been a real blow for researchers in the field. almost like hitting a scientific dead end after so much effort.
Why did it fail? Why couldn't they find that universal checklist?
Well, looking back, the reason seems quite clear now. Leadership is just far too complex, far too contextual to be boiled down to a static list of personal qualities.
Meaning, what works in one place might not work somewhere else.
Exactly. A trait like, say, extreme assertiveness might be absolutely crucial for a military commander leading troops into battle under fire. But that same trait could be utterly counterproductive, even disastrous, for a consensus-building team leader in, I don't know, a creative design agency. The context profoundly shapes which traits are actually valuable.
That makes sense.
And there was another problem. Even if certain traits were commonly found in leaders, it was incredibly difficult to prove they caused the leadership effectiveness.
Correlation versus causation.
Precisely. Did a leader succeed because they were confident, or did their repeated success make them more confident? The direction of causality was really murky. So this fundamental inability to find a universal, applicable checklist led to the stark realization that simply listing traits wasn't enough. It wasn't the whole story of leadership.
Okay, so trait theory hit a wall back then, but what does this all mean for us today? Is it completely irrelevant now? Should you just ignore your personality type or natural strengths when thinking about leadership?
Oh, not at all. Its legacy is actually profound, even if the original goal wasn't met. Our source highlights that psychometric tools are an example of trait theory principles in action, even today.
You mean like personality tests?
Exactly. Think about things like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, the Big Five personality traits, DISC assessments, various aptitude tests. These are still widely used.
And recruitment, right?
Yeah.
And team building.
Yes, in staff recruitment, for team formation, and definitely for personal and professional development. They don't offer definitive answers, they don't guarantee someone will be a leader, but they do highlight key personality traits. They give individuals and organizations invaluable insights into potential strengths, natural inclinations, maybe blind spots, and areas for development.
So for you, the listener, how can this be useful?
It means understanding your own traits, your natural inclinations, your strengths, your weaknesses, how you tend to react under pressure, and then thinking about how they might interact with different roles, different teams, different organizational cultures. That can be incredibly valuable.
It's about self-awareness then.
Absolutely. Cultivating self-awareness is key. Recognizing your leadership predispositions and then consciously deciding how to leverage them, or maybe how to compensate for potential downsides. It's not a magic bullet telling you if you are a leader, but it's like a powerful mirror. It helps you understand how you might lead and where your natural fit might be. You know, the journey of leadership really does start with knowing yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. So the failure to identify those universal traits clearly shifted the focus. It moved from who leaders are
To what they actually do.
exactly. Which brings us very neatly to our next major era, behavioral theories. And this was a truly revolutionary concept, wasn't it, to behavioral theories? What leaders do, 1940s, 1960s, right? So after the great man and trait theories kind of struggled to find those universal innate characteristics, there was this radical shift in thinking. It really defined the behavioral era starting around the 1940s.
It's a huge shift.
This new perspective, as our source highlights, basically asserted that leaders are largely made rather than born. Now, that was a huge departure from the previous deterministic views, wasn't it?
Oh, completely. It suggested that leadership isn't about some mystical inherited qualities, but it's actually defined by learned behaviors, behaviors that can be taught, practiced, and developed over time. It really threw open the doors for leadership training as a legitimate field.
It almost democratized leadership, in a way.
I think that's a great way to put it. It was a democratizing force in leadership thinking. The focus moved decisively from innate qualities, what a leader is, to observable actions, what a leader does.
So researchers started looking for patterns.
Exactly. They aim to identify specific patterns of behavior being grouped together and labeled as styles, as our source puts it. The underlying assumption was beautifully simple, really.
Which was?
If you could identify the common behaviors of effective leaders, you could then teach those behaviors to others. This concept fundamentally opened up the possibility of leadership development and training for a much, much broader group of people.
Making leadership potentially accessible to anyone willing to learn and grow, not just those born into privilege or with perceived natural talent.
Precisely. It shifted the focus from destiny to development.
It sounds incredibly practical.
Yeah.
A real game changer for anyone looking to improve their leadership skills. But our source also points out a critical limitation here.
Yes, there's always a but, isn't there?
It seems so. This theory, it says, largely ignores the situation and environment of the leader. So, while it focused brilliantly on actions, it still missed a crucial piece of the puzzle, the when and where those actions are most effective.
That's the key limitation. Despite that, though, the behavioral approach became a prevalent approach within management training. It really took hold. And that underscores a strong belief that leadership skills are indeed developable.
It provided a tangible framework.
Exactly, a tangible framework for training programs that honestly are still in use today in various forms. The core idea persists. If you want to be a better leader, here are the actions, the specific behaviors you should practice.
Like what call the behaviors?
I'll think of workshops on active listening or effective delegation, providing constructive feedback, even just learning how to run an efficient meeting. All of these skills-based training initiatives are rooted fundamentally in behavioral theory.
And because it was so practical, it was widely adopted.
Yes, its practical application meant it was widely adopted and remains profoundly influential even now.
So how do we see this playing out today? For you listening right now, are these behavioral theories still relevant? Can you really learn to be a leader based on these ideas?
I'd say they are profoundly relevant, maybe even more so than ever. Our source mentions numerous leadership training programs today exemplify this theory.
So pretty much any leadership course.
Consider almost any workshop or course you might take on communication skills, strategic planning techniques, conflict resolution methods, or team-building exercises specifically for leaders. All of these are built on the fundamental premise that you can learn and improve specific leadership skills and behaviors.
Which is quite empowering, isn't it?
Absolutely. It empowers individuals by suggesting that leadership is not just a birthright or some kind of roll of the genetic dice. It's a skill set that can be acquired, honed, and mastered through conscious effort and dedicated practice. It really emphasizes that anyone with dedication can learn to be a more effective leader, regardless of their innate traits. It shifts the power from destiny to effort.
Speaking of influential behavioral models from this era, perhaps the best-known example is Blake and Mouton's managerial grid. That came about in the 1960s, right?
Yes, the managerial grid. It's truly iconic, a cornerstone of behavioral leadership theory, and it's quite brilliant in its simplicity, which is probably why it caught on so well.
How does it work? What does it classify?
It classifies leadership styles by plotting a leader's concern for production or tasks versus concern for people or relationships. Imagine a simple two-axis grid, like a standard XY graph you'd see in math class.
Okay, got it. X and Y axis.
The x-axis represents the leader's focus on getting tasks done, achieving efficiency, maximizing organizational output. That's the concern for production. The y-axis represents their focus on employee well-being, morale, personal development, interpersonal relationships. That's the concern for people.
So leaders can be plotted somewhere on this grid
Hmm.
based on how much they focus on tasks versus people.
Exactly. They could be anywhere, low concern for both, high concern for both, or high on one axis and low on the other. It creates different leadership style profiles.
Okay, walk us through this a bit. What does it mean to have, say, high or low concern in these areas? What are the practical implications for you as a leader, understanding where you might naturally fall on this grid?
All right, let's look at a few of the classic archetypes Blake and Mouton identified. A leader who is high on concern for production but low on concern for people would be labeled authority compliance, or sometimes just task management.
What does that look like in practice?
This person is driven almost solely by output. They're often authoritarian. Maybe they see people as just cogs in a machine to get the job done. Think of a manager relentlessly pushing for extreme quotas, regardless of staff burnout or morale. Results are everything.
Okay, got it. What's the opposite?
The opposite would be someone high on concern for people but low on concern for production. This style is often called country club management.
Country club. Sounds nice, but maybe not very productive.
Exactly. They're highly agreeable, very focused on harmony, keeping everyone happy, boosting morale, but potentially much less effective at achieving actual goals or maintaining discipline. Think of a leader who constantly lets deadlines slide just to avoid conflict or upsetting anyone.
Are there others on the grid?
Yes, the grid also identifies impoverished management, which is low on both concern for production and concern for people, kind of checked out, minimal effort. And there's middle-of-the-road management, which is, well, moderate on both, seeking compromise, but maybe never excelling in either area.
But Blake and Mouton suggested an ideal style, didn't they?
They did, and this is what makes the grid so impactful. Their suggested ideal style is team management. This is where a leader exhibits high concern for both production and people. High task focus, high relationship focus.
Why is that considered ideal?
The underlying belief is that committed people who feel genuinely valued, engaged, empowered, and are working towards a shared purpose will naturally lead to the best, most sustainable results. It's about empowering your team to own the process and the outcome, fostering collaboration and high standards simultaneously.
So, practically, how can understanding this grid help a leader?
Well, it helps leaders analyze their own dominant style, maybe tendencies they weren't fully aware of, and it helps them understand the potential strengths and weaknesses of these different combinations of task and people orientation. It's a really powerful framework for self-reflection.
So you can look at it and think, maybe I'm too task-focused sometimes.
Exactly. It allows you to honestly assess your current approach and then consider how you might need to adjust your focus to become more effective in different situations or with different teams. For example, if you realize you're overly task-focused, the grid encourages you to consider how investing more in team relationships, communication, and development might actually improve long-term productivity and reduce turnover, not hinder it. It encourages balance and a deliberate awareness of where your attention is going.
That makes so much sense. It's a really clear visual. But even with behavioral theories giving us these great insights into what leaders do, like the managerial grid illustrates, you mentioned that crucial piece was still missing the environment, the context.
Precisely.
If behaviors can be learned, the question really became, when and where should specific behaviors be applied? The managerial grid, for all its strengths, didn't fully account for that situational nuance, did it?
No, it didn't. And ignoring the situation's nuances, the specific context, was a significant gap. While behavioral theories brilliantly showed that leaders could learn new behaviors, they didn't provide much guidance on which specific behaviors were most appropriate or effective in which specific contexts. A democratic, team-focused style might work beautifully in one team setting, but could be disastrously slow or ineffective in a crisis situation.
Right.
This inherent limitation ultimately led to the emergence of the next major phase in leadership thinking, the situational era, or the context era. This was another monumental shift, recognizing that the external environment plays an enormous, often decisive role in leadership effectiveness. It's like discovering that a great chef needs to know not just how to cook various dishes, but also what ingredients are available in the pantry and who they're actually cooking for tonight. Context is everything.
You are listening to The Deep Dive, powered by the insights of the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. We're exploring the rich history of leadership theories, uncovering how our understanding of what makes an effective leader has evolved over time. We've moved from the great man to learned behaviors, and now we're about to dive into the crucial importance of context. 3. Context era. The importance of situation, 1960s. Okay, so the limitations of those behavioral theories, particularly their, let's say, neglect of the surrounding environment, really did pave the way for the context era, which took hold in the 1960s. This era brought this crucial recognition that the environment plays a significant role in the leader-follower dynamic, as our source paper puts it.
A really profound shift. It basically acknowledged that leadership isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of endeavor. It's much more nuanced than that.
The focus shifted dramatically then.
Oh, completely. It shifted to leadership in particular situations rather than on the traits or behaviors of leaders in isolation. This implied a fundamental truth that, honestly, many leaders today instinctively understand. There is no single best leadership style that's applicable in absolutely all circumstances.
What works when leading, say, a crisis response team?
It's probably going to be very different from what works when you're trying to foster long-term innovation in a research lab, or maybe just managing a long-standing, stable department where things are predictable.
So the effectiveness of a leader's approach was suddenly seen as highly dependent on the specific context they found themselves in.
Exactly. The puzzle of leadership gained this crucial new dimension, the situation itself.
And this gave rise to the core idea of this era. Leaders must, and this is key, assess the context in which they operate and then decide what style will fit the situation best.
Right. And this became known as contingency theory. Leadership effectiveness is quite literally contingent on the situation.
Contingency, that word really captures it, doesn't it? Success is conditional.
Perfectly. It's not about finding the perfect leader in a vacuum or the perfect set of behaviors that work everywhere. It's about finding the right match between the leader, their style, and the specific demands of the situation they're facing.
What kinds of situational demands?
Well, it includes considering the characteristics of the followers. What are their skills? What's their motivation level? Their experience? It also includes the nature of the task at hand. How complex is it? How urgent? Is it clearly defined or ambiguous? And even the broader organizational factors like structure and culture play a role.
So it added a new layer of complexity to leadership,
Yeah,
demanding a more dynamic understanding.
definitely. Leaders had to become, in a sense, strategists of context. Reading the situation became just as important as knowing what to do.
Now, one of the pioneering models in this new way of thinking was Fred Fiedler's contingency theory, also from the 1960s. He was among the first to really formalize this situational approach, wasn't he?
Yes, Fiedler's theory really broke new ground. His ideas, while sometimes debated even today, were hugely influential at the time, and he had a rather unique take on it.
Oh, so?
Well, while he absolutely agreed that context is critical, Fiedler had this unique core assertion. He believed a leader's style is largely fixed, pretty much set.
Fixed. So unlike what later situational theories might suggest, he didn't think leaders could easily adapt their style from one situation to another.
That was his view. He thought it was quite difficult, maybe impossible, for leaders to fundamentally change their core orientation. So instead of expecting the leader to constantly change for every situation, Fiedler's theory suggested that organizations should try to put leaders into situations that best match their style.
Fit the leader to the situation, not the other way around.
Exactly. Fit the leader to the situation. It's a really interesting perspective.
How did he figure out a leader's fixed style?
He developed a tool that became quite famous called the Least Preferred Coworker Scale, or LPC scale. Basically, you think about the person you've least enjoyed working with and rate them on a series of adjectives.
Okay. How does that tell you about your leadership style?
Well, Fiedler argued that if you rated your least preferred coworker relatively positively, a high LPC score, it indicated you were fundamentally relationship-oriented. You prioritize harmony and connections, even with difficult colleagues.
And if you rated them negatively?
If you rated them very negatively, a low LPC score, it suggested you were task-oriented. Your priority is getting the job done, even if it means sacrificing some personal relationships along the way.
Interesting. So you have these two styles. How did he match them to situations?
Fiedler then identified 3 key situational factors that determined how favorable a situation was for a leader.
Okay, what were they?
First, leader-member relations. How much trust, liking, and respect exists between the leader and the team. Second, task structure. How clear and defined are the tasks? Are the goals and procedures unambiguous? And third, position power. How much formal authority does the leader have? Can they hire, fire, reward, punish?
So high favorability would be good relations, clear tasks, and strong power.
Exactly. And low favorability would be the opposite. And Fiedler's big conclusion, based on his research, was that task-oriented leaders, those with low LPC scores, perform best in situations that are either very favorable or very unfavorable.
Okay, the extremes. What about relationship-oriented leaders?
Relationship-oriented leaders, high LPC scores, tended to perform best in situations of moderate favorability. Those situations in the middle where relationships can make a bigger difference in navigating ambiguity or motivating the team.
So, if a leader's style is essentially fixed, as Fiedler argued, what does that mean for things like talent development or team formation? If you're a manager or running an organization, how would you use this idea? It seems to challenge the whole idea of training leaders to be flexible.
It absolutely does. It suggests that instead of spending huge resources trying to fundamentally change a leader's core style, which Fiedler believed was largely immutable, set early in life, organizations might be better off investing in accurately assessing that style first.
And then what?
And then strategically placing leaders into roles or situations where their natural tendencies will be most effective. It becomes an exercise in matching.
You give an example.
Sure. A highly task-oriented leader, according to Fiedler, might thrive in a high-stakes crisis situation, like leading a disaster response team where clear, decisive action and immediate control are paramount, very unfavorable, needing strong direction. Or perhaps leading a highly structured routine operation where everything is clear and they have strong authority, very favorable.
And the relationship-oriented leader.
They might be the ideal choice for building morale in a demoralized team, or fostering collaboration and innovation in a stable but complex project, like a long-term research group, where navigating interpersonal dynamics and building trust is key to success, moderately favorable.
So this approach shifts the focus.
It really does. It shifts the focus from leader development per se towards organizational design that optimizes for existing leadership styles. It's about designing roles or projects that play to leaders' innate strengths rather than trying to force every leader into the same mold or expecting them to be perfectly adaptable chameleons. It's a stark contrast to the idea of developing leaders who can seamlessly switch styles, and it really challenges that notion that absolutely anyone can be an effective leader in absolutely any situation if they just try hard enough.
Hmm. That's a really different way of looking at it. Now, within this same context era, a broader concept of situational leadership also emerged. And unlike Fiedler's fixed style, this viewpoint suggested that leaders must adapt their style. This is probably the one most people are familiar with today, right?
Yes, I think so. This is where we see that strong emphasis on leader adaptability really come to the forefront. This viewpoint, famously popularized by models like Hersey and Blanchard's situational leadership model, which is very widely used in training, it emphasizes the leader's ability, and indeed their responsibility, to adjust their approach
Adjust based on what?
based on the unique needs of their followers and the situation itself. So this implies a much more dynamic, flexible approach compared to Fiedler's model. A leader might need to be highly directive with, say, a new, inexperienced team member who lacks both the competence and the confidence for a task.
Giving clear instructions step by step.
Exactly. But then that same leader would need to shift to a more supportive or perhaps delegating style as that individual gains competence and confidence over time. It's all about meeting your followers where they are on their development journey for a specific task.
That sounds incredibly practical, very intuitive almost. But how does a leader actually do this in the moment? What specific factors might they consider when deciding how to adapt their style? Can you give us some actionable insights for our listeners?
Sure, it involves a keen assessment of typically two main factors regarding their followers, specifically related to the task at hand. First is the follower's readiness or maturity level. Now, this isn't just about age or general experience.
It's task specific.
Yes, it's task specific. It breaks down into their competence. Do they have the necessary skills and knowledge for this task? And their commitment. Do they have the motivation and confidence to tackle this task?
Okay, competence and commitment. What else?
While Hersey and Blanchard focus primarily on follower readiness, other situational models also explicitly consider the complexity and structure of the task itself. Is it simple and routine, or complex and ambiguous? And the urgency in the situation certainly plays a role implicitly. Is there a crisis demanding immediate directive action, or is there time for a more coaching or collaborative approach?
So based on assessing follower readiness for the task, the leader chooses a style.
Exactly. Hersey and Blanchard's model outlines four main leadership styles. First, directing or telling. This is high task focus, low relationship focus. You provide specific instructions and closely supervise performance. This is best for followers who are low in competence but maybe high in commitment, like an enthusiastic beginner, or low in both unable and unwilling insecure.
Okay, clear instructions. What's next?
Second, coaching or selling. This is high task and high relationship focus. You still direct and supervise, but you also explain decisions, solicit suggestions, and offer encouragement. This is for followers who have some competence but are still lacking commitment, perhaps discouraged or lacking confidence. They need direction and support.
Makes sense then.
Third, supporting or participating. This shifts to low task focus but high relationship focus. You facilitate and support the follower's efforts, share decision-making responsibility. This is for followers who have the competence but lack commitment or confidence. They know how to do it but need encouragement or help overcoming hesitation.
And the last one.
Fourth, delegating. This is low task and low relationship focus. You turn over responsibility for decisions and implementation to the follower. This is for followers who are high in both competence and commitment confidence. They're able and willing, so you can trust them to take ownership.
So it's about being versatile, responsive, almost like a leadership chameleon, adjusting your color to match the follower's needs for that specific situation.
That's a great analogy. It's about being versatile and responsive. It means less micromanagement for your experienced, confident team members and more hands-on guidance and support for those who are newer or less sure of themselves on a particular task. It requires diagnosing the situation accurately and then flexing your style accordingly.
The situational era, including both Fiedler and Hersey and Blanchard, truly showed us that context matters immensely. That was a huge leap forward in understanding leadership, moving us beyond those fixed ideas of traits or universal behaviors. But The world kept getting more complex, didn't it? Globalization, rapid technological change.
Absolutely. The pace picked up dramatically.
And these theories, while incredibly powerful and practical, maybe didn't fully capture how leaders inspire people beyond just fitting a specific immediate situation. How do leaders move beyond just task completion or adapting to current needs to truly ignite passion, build movements, drive significant transformative change?
You've hit on a crucial point there. While situational theories were powerful and practical for adapting to existing conditions, the growing complexity of organizations and the external environment you mentioned, rapid tech innovation, increasing globalization, constant disruption, it demanded new theories.
Theories that looked beyond just adaptation.
Yes, beyond just traits or specific behaviors or isolated situations, these new challenges required leaders who could inspire, who could align people around shared values, who could mobilize people on a deeper, more emotional and intellectual level, leaders who could foster not just compliance or even situational competence, but genuine, passionate commitment.
Leaders who could articulate a compelling future, even in uncertainty.
Exactly. This realization led to our next major phase in leadership thinking. The new leadership era, an era often characterized as being driven by values, vision, and deep inspiration. 4. Theories driven by values, inspiring and engaging, 1970s, 1990s.
So this new leadership era, really taking shape from the 1970s through the 1990s and into the 2000s, emerged as a direct response to that realization you just mentioned, that focusing on one aspect or dimension of leadership cannot address all the complexity of the phenomenon, as our source puts it.
Right, it felt like all the previous theories had given us critical pieces of the puzzle. Traits matter sometimes, behaviors can be learned, situation is key, but none of them, in isolation, really gave us the full, vibrant picture of how leaders truly move mountains, inspire deep commitment, or drive fundamental change.
The driving forces were just too strong to ignore.
Undeniable. Our source points to rapid change, disruptive technological innovation, and increasing globalization. These forces meant that the traditional, often unidirectional, top-down influencing process, which had really defined much of earlier leadership thought, was just becoming less effective, maybe even obsolete in some contexts.
Organizations needed more than just managers.
They needed more than just managers who could maintain the status quo or adapt to a clearly defined current situation. They needed leaders who could navigate profound uncertainty, who could ignite passion, who could inspire people to move into that uncertainty with a sense of purpose. Leaders who could articulate a compelling vision of the future, even when the path wasn't clear.
So this era brought a much broader, maybe more sophisticated perspective on leadership.
Definitely. The focus expanded significantly, becoming about the complex interactions among the leader, the followers, the situation, and the system as a whole. It's a truly holistic view, isn't it? Almost like zooming out from watching a single player to understanding the entire ecosystem of the game they're playing in.
And critically, you mentioned earlier, there was this new appreciation for the latent leadership capacities of followers. That sounds like a big deal.
It was a huge shift from many earlier theories that largely viewed followers as passive recipients of leadership directives, just waiting to be told what to do. Now, the emphasis was shifting towards how leaders could engage, empower, and even actively develop the leadership potential within their teams.
Fostering a more collaborative or distributed approach.
Exactly. Recognizing that inspiration and deep engagement were vital not just for morale, but for organizational agility, innovation, and sustained success in this rapidly changing world. It was about unleashing the collective energy and intelligence of the entire group, not just relying on the person at the top.
Okay, so within this new era focusing on values and inspiration, one of the key theories to emerge, or perhaps be more formally defined, was transactional leadership. This was prominent from the 1970s to the 1980s. Our source says it relies on formal exchanges to motivate followers. It sounds very practical, almost like a direct contract.
It is, in essence, a straightforward deal. A quid pro quo. You do X, you get Y. Transactional leaders use their formal authority to set clear goals and reward or punish performance, primarily to maintain routines and achieve established organizational goals.
It's like a transaction, literally.
Pretty much. Followers perform their duties, meet specific targets, and in return, they receive agreed-upon rewards, salary increases, bonuses, promotions, maybe public recognition. If they fail to meet expectations, they might face consequences, disciplinary action, lack of rewards, negative feedback.
And the perception of fairness is key.
Absolutely vital. The follower's perception concerning fairness and equity of the exchange with the leader is vital for the system to work effectively over time. People need to feel the deal is fair. It's fundamentally about managing expectations and ensuring compliance within established structures, a very clear, often objective system.
Where does this transactional approach work best? Does it have a specific sweet spot where it really shines? When should a leader lean into this style?
Yes, it's particularly effective, according to the theory and our source, in mature organizations that already have clearly defined structure and goals to keep them on track and reinforce the status quo.
Like large established companies, government agencies.
Exactly. Think of large corporations, government departments, maybe manufacturing plants where efficiency, predictability, and strict adherence to procedure are paramount. Transactional leadership is also noted as being effective in guiding efficiency decisions, helping to cut costs, streamline existing processes, and improve productivity within that kind of structured environment.
Can you give a concrete example?
Sure. Imagine a factory manager overseeing an assembly line. They might set very clear daily production targets, offer specific bonuses for exceeding those targets, and implement clear penalties or retraining for quality control failures. Or think of a call center manager who tracks metrics like call handling times and customer satisfaction scores very closely, rewarding the high performers and providing corrective coaching to those who consistently fall short. It's really about maintaining order, ensuring compliance with existing processes, and achieving predictable, measurable outcomes. It's the engine that keeps the train running reliably on its existing schedule.
Okay, that's clear. Now, in stark contrast, we have transformational leadership. This also emerged prominently in the 1970s and 1980s, often discussed alongside transactional leadership. This is where leaders encourage, inspire, and motivate followers to transcend their self-interest for the organization's good. Wow, that sounds much more about passion, purpose, and a truly visionary approach.
It absolutely is. It's a fundamentally different kind of dynamic. Transformational leaders articulate a vision and encourage followers to achieve higher levels of performance and embrace change. It's not just about compliance or simple exchanges. It's about inspiring, genuine, deep commitment.
How do they do that?
They connect with followers on both an emotional and an intellectual level. They appeal to their followers' values and aspirations, making them feel part of something larger, something more meaningful than just their daily tasks. They empower followers to become more than they perhaps thought they could be.
There are specific components to this, aren't there? Often called the 4 Is.
That's right, developed by Bass and others. The 4 Is provide a great framework. First, idealized influence. These leaders act as strong role models. They walk the talk, embodying the values they espouse, earning deep trust and respect. Followers admire them and want to emulate them.
Okay, role modeling.
Second, inspirational motivation. They articulate a compelling, attractive vision of the future that excites and challenges followers, giving clear meaning and purpose to their work. They communicate optimism and enthusiasm.
Vision and meaning, got it.
Third, intellectual stimulation. They challenge the status quo. They encourage followers to be innovative and creative, to question old assumptions, reframe problems, and approach challenges in new ways. They foster a climate where it's safe to experiment.
Encouraging new thinking. And the last one.
Fourth, individualized consideration. They show genuine care and concern for the individual needs and feelings of their followers. They act as coaches or mentors, paying attention to each person's development needs and helping them grow.
So it's a much deeper, more personal connection.
Absolutely. It's a deep, often personal connection that drives collective ambition and really propels people beyond their usual comfort zones to achieve extraordinary things.
When is this kind of leadership most vital? It sounds like it's tailor-made for situations that require much more than just maintaining the status quo, like for true change agents.
Precisely. This approach is absolutely vital when an organization needs to be revitalized, is undergoing significant change, or requires a new direction. Think about turnarounds, mergers, major strategic shifts, or entering completely new markets.
I'm particularly relevant today.
Especially relevant. Our source highlights it's especially vital to today's fast-paced technological industry where innovation and agility can make or break an organization. These environments demand constant adaptability, high levels of creativity, a willingness to embrace disruption, and a deeply shared commitment to a future that doesn't fully exist yet. Transformational leaders are particularly adept at fostering all of these qualities.
And our source highlights some truly iconic examples here. Jeff Bezos, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates. These names are practically synonymous with massive industry shifts and revolutionary innovation. How do they exemplify this?
Well, these leaders certainly exemplify transformation through their incredibly compelling visions and their uncanny ability to rally people, employees, investors, customers around ambitious, sometimes seemingly audacious goals.
Like Steve Jobs at Apple.
Think of Steve Jobs' relentless, almost obsessive pursuit of design perfection and revolutionary user experience at Apple. He didn't just manage product lines, he inspired a workforce to believe they could create world-changing products like the Macintosh, the iPod, the iPhone. He famously challenged them to think different, pushing boundaries constantly and often defying conventional wisdom, even if, as many accounts suggest, it meant being an incredibly demanding leader at times. The transformational impact was undeniable.
And Bezos at Amazon?
Jeff Bezos built Amazon into a global behemoth based on a radical long-term focus on customer obsession and a profound willingness to experiment relentlessly, fail fast, and learn. He didn't just optimize existing supply chains, he fundamentally transformed retail and then cloud computing by articulating a vision that convinced investors and employees alike to think decades ahead, to embrace rapid iteration, and to constantly reinvent the business.
Bill Gates, too.
Bill Gates, with Microsoft, articulated that incredibly powerful vision of a computer on every desk and in every home, running Microsoft software, of course. That vision inspired a whole generation of software developers to build the digital infrastructure of our modern world. These leaders didn't just manage existing structures, they transformed entire industries by inspiring deep commitment to a bold, often disruptive future vision.
Okay, so we have transactional, focusing on exchanges and maintaining order, and transformational, focusing on vision and inspiring change. Are they mutually exclusive? Do you have to pick one or the other as a leader? Can you be both?
That's a really great and practical question, and the answer is generally no, they are not mutually exclusive. In fact, many scholars and practitioners argue that the most effective leaders often employ both styles, adapting as needed.
How does that work?
Well, think about it. Transactional leadership provides the necessary structure, clarity, and accountability for smooth daily operations. It ensures that the organization remains stable, efficient, and productive in its core functions. It's the essential engine, as we said, that keeps the train running reliably on the tracks, ensuring tasks are completed properly, rules are followed, quality is maintained, and short-term goals are met. You need that.
But you also need direction.
Exactly. Transformational leadership, on the other hand, provides the vision, the inspiration, and the compelling destination needed to steer that train in a new, perhaps more ambitious or adaptive direction. You need both the steady hand to manage the day-to-day processes effectively, maintain quality, and ensure accountability. And you need the inspiring vision to navigate significant change, foster crucial innovation, and motivate people to reach for higher collective aspirations, especially when things get tough.
So a leader might switch between them.
An effective leader might use predominantly transactional approaches for routine tasks or performance management, but then switch decisively to a transformational style when launching a major change initiative, responding to a crisis that requires extraordinary effort, or trying to build commitment to a challenging new strategic direction. They become complementary forces in a well-rounded leadership toolkit. You need both the operational effectiveness and the inspirational vision.
That makes sense. Now, another powerful concept that gained renewed popularity in this era, really focusing heavily on the people aspect, is servant leadership. Our source attributes its modern popularization to Robert Greenleaf in the 1970s. It places a profound emphasis on the importance of followers.
Yes, servant leadership, championed by Greenleaf, truly turns the traditional leadership hierarchy on its head, conceptually at least. Instead of the leader being perched at the top of the pyramid dictating terms down.
The pyramid gets flipped.
Exactly. Servant leaders conceptually place themselves at the bottom, focused upwards. They place followers' needs and development first, acting as servants. Their primary motivation and priority is helping team members grow and put others ahead of the organization's demands, paradoxically believing this will best serve the organization in the long run.
So it's not about the leader accumulating power or status.
Quite the opposite. It's about empowering and enabling those they lead to reach their full potential. The core belief is that when followers thrive, when they feel supported, heard, developed, and empowered, the organization as a whole benefits enormously. It fosters incredible loyalty and engagement because employees feel genuinely supported and valued as individuals, not just as resources.
What does this actually look like in daily practice? How does a servant leader operate day to day? Can you give us some concrete examples for our listeners?
Sure. It manifests through very concrete, often quite humble and empathetic behaviors. A servant leader practices deep, active listening, taking the time to truly understand and empathize with team members' challenges, their concerns, their aspirations. They don't just talk, they listen intently.
What else?
They spend a significant amount of their time removing obstacles for their teams, making sure people have the resources they need to succeed, and actively creating a psychologically safe environment where people feel comfortable speaking up, experimenting, asking for help, admitting mistakes, and learning without fear of blame.
So a focus on growth, too.
Absolutely. They prioritize mentoring and coaching, not just focusing on immediate job skills, but on the followers' broader personal and professional growth. They actively look for opportunities to help their people develop.
Can you picture a manager doing this?
Think of a team lead who constantly checks in with their direct reports, not just about project deadlines, but asking genuinely about their career goals, their overall well-being, any challenges they might be facing outside of work that could be impacting them. They might volunteer to take on some administrative burdens so their team can focus on more creative or high-value work. Or maybe they go to bat for their team members to get them the training, the visibility, or the recognition they deserve, even if it doesn't directly benefit the leader.
What's the result of this approach?
This style tends to foster a very strong sense of community, mutual trust, and shared purpose within a team. It often leads to highly motivated, deeply loyal, and eventually quite self-managing teams who are profoundly committed to the collective success, largely because they feel genuinely invested in and cared for by their leader. It's a leadership style really rooted in deep humility and a profound, authentic commitment to the well-being and growth of others.
We're moving through this fascinating landscape of leadership theory here on The Deep Dive, brought to you by the valuable insights from the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu. We've seen how theories have evolved from what a leader fundamentally is to what a leader does, then how they need to adapt to context, and now, in this new leadership era, how they inspire through vision and values, and how they can choose to serve their followers first. It's a progression that truly reflects the increasing complexity and perhaps the increasing humanity expected in our workplaces. The Emergent Theories, The Modern Landscape, 2000s. All right, as we transition fully into the 21st century, the 2000s and beyond, the understanding of leadership continues its rapid evolution. It feels like it's accelerating even more, maybe reflecting the increasing complexity, the volatility, the sheer interconnectedness of our globalized world.
It certainly feels that way.
We see, as our source notes, a continued shift in leadership concepts, moving further towards shared, collective, and collaborative leadership practices. It really seems we're moving definitively beyond that image of the singular, heroic leader at the top towards something much more distributed and dynamic.
Absolutely. And the implication here is truly profound for how we structure work and think about influence. The idea is that success in an organization is more dependent on coordinated leadership practices distributed throughout the organization rather than the actions of a few individuals at the top.
So leadership isn't just one person's job anymore.
Exactly. It's viewed increasingly as a fluid, dynamic process that can and arguably should emerge and happen across multiple levels and roles within an organization. It's not just vested in a formal title. This distributes responsibility, yes, but it also fosters empowerment and, crucially, it allows organizations to leverage the collective intelligence and initiative of the entire workforce.
Because in today's fast-paced world, no single individual can possibly have all the answers.
Or bear all the burden of effective leadership across all domains. It's about harnessing everyone's expertise and potential for influence, wherever it resides in the system.
Okay, so building on that, one of the theories that really seems to resonate with this shift towards more human-centric, maybe more ethical leadership, and which gained significant prominence in the 2000s, is authentic leadership. Our source notes that authentic leaders emphasize self-awareness, ethics, and consistency with their personal values. This sounds like leadership coming from the inside out.
That's a perfect way to describe it. Authentic leaders are those who are, first and foremost, profoundly true to themselves. They possess a deep understanding of their own strengths, their weaknesses, their core values, their emotions, and importantly, how their behavior impacts others.
And they act on that self-awareness.
Yes, they act in ways that are consistently aligned with those core values and beliefs, even when it's difficult, even under intense pressure, or when facing really tough ethical decisions. They don't just say one thing and do another.
What does that look like to followers?
They tend to be transparent with their teams. They foster an environment of openness, honesty, and encourage genuine, trusting relationships with followers. This transparency and consistency builds incredibly deep levels of trust over time.
And why is that trust so important? What's the impact?
Well, when leaders are perceived as authentic, as real, genuine, reliable followers, are much more likely to fully commit to their vision. They're more willing to share information openly, both good and bad news. They feel psychologically safer to contribute their best ideas, to challenge assumptions respectfully, and even to speak up about problems or ethical concerns without fear of retribution.
Give you an example.
Imagine a leader who openly admits a mistake they made and what they learned from it, rather than trying to hide it or blame others. Or perhaps a leader who shares a relevant personal struggle to demonstrate vulnerability and resilience in a relatable way. This kind of behavior fosters a human connection that goes far beyond a mere job title or hierarchical position. It's ultimately about leading with integrity and your true self, and by doing so, creating a culture where others feel safe and encouraged to do the same. And this isn't just a nice to have. Research suggests it has very tangible positive impacts on team cohesion, engagement, ethical behavior, and ultimately performance.
Building on that human-centered approach, another important concept that has emerged more recently is inclusive leadership. Our source mentions it focuses on a person-centered approach. In a world increasingly and rightly focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion, this seems incredibly relevant, doesn't it?
Hugely relevant and increasingly seen as essential for effective leadership today. Inclusive leadership is all about intentionally creating and nurturing environments where all voices, regardless of an individual's background, identity, role, position, personality, or unique perspective, are not just passively heard, but are actively sought out, valued, respected, and genuinely incorporated into the team's work and decision-making.
So it's more than just having diverse people present.
Much more. It's based on, as the source says, dynamic processes that occur between leaders and followers and focuses on empowering followers to becoming leaders themselves, in a sense. This means the leader actively solicits diverse perspectives, especially from quieter voices or those typically marginalized. They consciously challenge their own unconscious biases and systemic biases within the team or organization. And they work hard to ensure that everyone feels a profound sense of belonging and psychological safety so they can contribute their unique insights and talents fully without fear of judgment or penalty.
What's the practical relevance of this? Why is it so important for organizations?
Well, fostering environments where all voices are genuinely heard and valued leads to demonstrably better outcomes. Firstly, you get better decision-making. When you have a wider range of ideas, experiences, cultural backgrounds, and thinking styles contributing to analyzing a problem or generating solutions, you simply get more robust, more creative, and often more ethical solutions. You avoid groupthink.
And innovation?
It absolutely fuels innovation. Different perspectives can spark completely new ways of looking at things, identify unseen opportunities, or highlight potential risks that the dominant group might miss. And perhaps most importantly, for long-term organizational health, it dramatically increases employee engagement, satisfaction, retention, and overall organizational resilience. Because people feel truly seen, respected, and appreciated for who they are and what they uniquely bring to the table. It's about maximizing the collective intelligence and potential of the entire workforce and creating a place where everyone can truly thrive.
The modern world, as we've said, is undeniably complex. We hear terms like VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous all the time. This brings us to another emergent theory, complexity leadership. Our source says it emerged as a means to deal with the complexity of our modern world. This sounds like a theory designed specifically for navigating the unpredictable chaos we often face.
It is precisely that, and it represents a very sophisticated systems-based approach to leadership. Complexity leadership takes a whole system view, considering contextual interactions that occur across an entire social system. It starts by acknowledging a fundamental truth. Today's organizations and the markets they operate in are generally not like rigid, predictable machines that can be simply controlled with top-down directives and detailed, long-term static plans. Instead, they are viewed as complex adaptive systems, or CAS. Think of ecosystems, or cities, or the internet. These are dynamic, interconnected networks of individuals, teams, and technologies, constantly interacting in ways that are often nonlinear and fundamentally unpredictable. Solutions, innovations, and new directions often emerge organically from the countless interactions within the system itself, rather than always being dictated solely from the top. Trying to exert rigid, centralized control over such a system is often futile and can even stifle the very adaptation and innovation needed to survive.
So if you can't rigidly control it, how does this theory help leaders actually lead? How do they understand and influence these complex adapted systems? That sounds like a huge challenge.
It is a challenge, and it requires a different mindset. It shifts the leader's focus significantly away from direct control and prediction towards fostering the conditions for positive emergence, self-organization, and adaptation within the system. Leaders in complex systems don't just command and control, they cultivate fertile ground for good things to happen.
How do they do that? What actions do they take?
They often act as sense makers, helping their teams understand the constantly shifting landscape, identifying patterns, and making connections. They facilitate crucial connections across different parts of the system, breaking down silos, creating networks, and enabling faster information flow, which allows for rapid collective learning and adaptation. They might also act as catalysts, introducing small, safe-to-fail experiments or perturbations into the system that can potentially lead to large, positive changes, without trying to meticulously plan or predict every single step. They understand that in complex systems, small actions can sometimes have disproportionately large, unpredictable effects, both good and bad, so they experiment cautiously and learn quickly.
So they embrace uncertainty.
They have to. They embrace uncertainty as an inherent part of the landscape rather than trying to eliminate it entirely. So, for you listening, this means perhaps less detailed micromanagement and more enablement. It's about providing clear guiding principles, strategic boundaries, necessary resources, and a compelling overall purpose or vision. And then trusting your teams more to self-organize, collaborate, and find innovative solutions within those boundaries. It means constantly observing the system, learning, adapting your approach, and influencing the conditions for success rather than trying to dictate the exact path to success. It's about building resilience and agility into the very fabric of the organization so it can thrive amidst unpredictability.
Finally, within this modern context, and particularly relevant for certain industries, our source also mentions compassionate leadership. It's explicitly stated as being relevant in the context of patient care, like in the NHS example we'll touch on later.
Yes, and while the source specifically highlights its critical relevance in patient care, where it absolutely is vital, its implied importance really extends to any field where human well-being, high-stress environments, deep interpersonal connections, and dealing with suffering are paramount. Think education, social work, emergency services, maybe even high-pressure customer service roles.
So what defines compassionate leadership?
It emphasizes empathy, active listening, and a genuine concern for the suffering, needs, and well-being of others. And this includes both the people being served, like patients or students, and the staff delivering the service. It's fundamentally about leading with kindness, care, understanding, and presence in all interactions.
How does that play out in, say, healthcare?
In healthcare, for instance, this translates to leaders who actively notice, listen to, and support their staff through the immense emotional challenges and stresses of the job. They acknowledge burnout. They work to foster a culture of psychological safety where staff feel able to express their struggles without judgment, and they ultimately strive to ensure that patients receive care that addresses not just their physical ailments, but also their emotional and psychological needs. It's about creating a virtuous cycle. An environment where caregivers themselves feel genuinely cared for and supported, which directly impacts their ability to provide high-quality, compassionate care to others. It's really about integrating our shared humanity into the very core of leadership practice, recognizing that leading people effectively means leading humans with empathy and understanding. 6. Practical guidance and key takeaways. Applying the evolution.
Okay, wow. Let's try to unpack all of this incredible journey we've just taken. We've traced leadership theory from those initial, almost mythical ideas of born leaders, the great man,
Right, the destined few.
through the discovery that behaviors could be learned, then the crucial understanding that leaders must adapt to situations,
Context is king.
and finally arriving at these more recent, complex ideas about inspiring through values, being authentic, inclusive, navigating complexity, and leading with compassion. It's been quite an evolution over nearly 2 centuries of thought.
It really has. And what's so fascinating, as our source paper highlights quite effectively, is that each theory has its merits and drawbacks and seems to provide part of the answer to the leadership puzzle. There's no single winner theory that replaces all the others.
So there's no one-size-fits-all solution to leadership.
Definitely not. Especially, as the source says, in today's complex, dynamic, and globalized world, organizations are consistently dealing with change and uncertainty, and no one theory has been able to address all the concerns regarding leadership. The constant evolution of these theories itself just reflects the sheer dynamism of the world we live in and the ever-changing nature of the challenges leaders face every single day. It's like leadership itself is a perpetually unfinished masterpiece, with each era adding new colors, new textures, new perspectives to the canvas.
So what does this all mean for you, for us as aspiring leaders, current leaders, maybe even followers, trying to understand our leaders better, navigating this constantly shifting landscape? How do we integrate all these different perspectives into our own leadership approach in a practical way?
I think it means we absolutely have to move beyond those traditional hierarchical views, as our source suggests. We need to adopt a more systemic perspective, focusing on leadership as a collective social process resulting from the interactions of multiple factors. You just can't rely on one single playbook or one favorite theory anymore and expect it to work everywhere.
So effective leadership today requires more nuance.
It requires a nuanced understanding of these different approaches, knowing the strengths and weaknesses of transactional versus transformational, knowing when to be directive versus supportive, understanding your own traits, but also focusing on adaptable behaviors, seeing the system, not just the individuals. And crucially, it requires the wisdom to know when and how to apply the most relevant approach or combination of approaches given the specific context. It's really about building a versatile leadership toolkit and continuously learning how and when to use each tool effectively. It's about becoming an agile, adaptive, and reflective leader.
To bring this down to earth and make it really concrete, let's look at the in practice section of our source material. It uses the UK hospital trusts within the National Health Service, NHS, as a real-world case study. And the NHS is described perfectly as large, complex, and mature organization, making it a fantastic microcosm for seeing how these diverse theories might actually play out together in a single setting.
It's an excellent example. So, for maintaining stability and ensuring the smooth running of routine operations within a massive system like the NHS, our source confirms that traditional leadership theory tells us that transactional leadership is ideal in this situation for keeping an established organization on track, maintaining the status quo, and ensuring the execution of plans.
Why is that?
Well, the NHS is this vast, incredibly complex bureaucracy. It needs its departments, its wards, its clinics, its administrative functions to run smoothly, follow strict protocols for safety and quality, achieve measurable objectives like managing patient throughput efficiently, sticking to tight budgets, and adhering to very strict clinical guidelines. Transactional leadership, with its focus on clear goals, monitoring performance, and rewards consequences, is highly effective in guiding efficiency decisions, helping to cut waste, improve productivity, and ensure compliance within that kind of highly structured environment.
Like managing nurse shifts, ensuring medical supplies are correctly stocked, maintaining accurate patient records, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Those essential routine functions benefit hugely from clear directives, clear incentives, and clear accountability structures. Transactional leadership helps keep that massive engine of healthcare running predictably and safely day to day.
But, as we all know, the NHS is also constantly undergoing tremendous change. It's not static. It's perpetually adapting to new medical technologies, evolving patient demographics and expectations, shifting government healthcare policies, and, of course, responding to unprecedented public health crises like the recent pandemic.
Precisely. It's a system under constant pressure and in constant flux. And in those dynamic, often quite turbulent situations, our source notes that leaders may switch styles and adopt a transformational leadership approach to engage followers in implementing change and encouraging innovation.
When would that be necessary?
Well, when the NHS needs to implement a major new digital health record system across multiple hospitals, or restructure services to cope with growing demand for chronic care, or rapidly reconfigure wards and retrain staff to respond to a sudden public health crisis, that requires more than just transactional management. Leaders must inspire their staff.
Inspire them to do what?
To embrace new ways of working, often involving significant disruption to routines. To overcome natural resistance to change, which is always present, and to commit wholeheartedly to a shared vision for better patient care or public health outcomes, even when they're exhausted or stretched thin. They need to articulate why these difficult changes are necessary, how they connect to the core mission and values of the NHS, and motivate often overburdened staff to go above and beyond, appealing to their dedication, their professionalism, their sense of purpose, rather than just relying on transactional rewards or fear of punishment. And it doesn't stop there. Healthcare organizations like the NHS, given their inherently collaborative and intensely human-centric nature, may also benefit from the application of other more contemporary leadership theories, such as collaborative, inclusive, and shared leadership.
Why are those so important in healthcare?
These approaches are absolutely critical because, as the source says, they blur the distinction between leader and follower and adopt a person-centered approach that focuses on the empowerment and development of followers. Think about a complex patient case involving a multidisciplinary team, doctors from different specialties, experienced nurses, junior trainees, physiotherapists, pharmacists, social workers, maybe administrators coordinating care.
Leadership has to be fluid there.
Exactly. In that setting, leadership often needs to shift dynamically based on who has the most relevant expertise or insight for the specific issue at hand. The consultant might lead on diagnosis, the specialist nurse on managing a complex wound, the pharmacist on medication interactions. Shared and collaborative leadership allows this to happen effectively. Inclusive leadership is vital too, ensuring that every voice on that team, from the most junior trainee observing something subtle to the most senior consultant, feels psychologically safe and empowered to speak up and contribute to complex clinical decision making. Getting that right can literally be a matter of life and death. And of course, specifically for the experience of both patients and staff, we have compassionate leadership. Promoting empathy, active listening, and genuine understanding in all interactions is just crucial in a high stress, emotionally demanding environment like a hospital, where both staff and patients are often experiencing vulnerability, fear, or suffering. Creating an environment where caregivers themselves feel cared for directly impacts the quality and safety of the care they provide.
And complexity leadership, where does that fit in the NHS?
Lastly, complexity leadership theory is arguably essential for a system as vast and interconnected as the NHS to thrive in today's uncertain and turbulent times. It encourages a process-oriented, contextual, and interactive approach. It suggests infiltrating leadership capabilities throughout the organization at all levels, allowing the vast system to adapt more organically, more resiliently to unpredictable challenges like new pandemics, unexpected technological disruptions, or rapid demographic shifts. It acknowledges that you simply cannot centrally plan and control every variable in such a complex adaptive system. You have to build the capacity for adaptation within the system itself.
Wow. So the NHS example really highlights the core practical lesson for all of us, doesn't it? The real challenge for professionals, whether they're in healthcare or any other field, is to be able to recognize which leadership theory is most relevant to their clinical practice or work situation and know how to effectively apply these theories in the workplace.
That's the essence of it. It's about developing that situational fluency, that diagnostic skill in leadership, becoming truly adaptable, insightful, and effective across a range of contexts.
This fascinating deep dive, full of practical insights, is brought to you by the 1-Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, providing actionable knowledge for your professional journey. Action Plan.
Implementing learnings. Okay, we've just navigated this incredible, rich journey through the entire evolution of leadership thought. We've seen how it's a dynamic, constantly evolving phenomenon. So the big question now is, how can you, listening right now, apply these profound insights in your own professional life? Whether you're formally leading a large team, managing a critical project, influencing colleagues without formal authority, or even just navigating your own career path more effectively. That's the crucial question, isn't it? Taking the theory and making it real. And I think the absolute key learning from this entire journey, the real aha moment, if there is one, is that there is no single perfect theory. There's no one magical formula for effective leadership that works every single time, in every single situation, for every single person.
That's liberating, in a way.
It is. Instead, effective leadership, especially today, almost always means skillfully drawing from multiple approaches. It means understanding when each one is likely to be most powerful and having the wisdom, the flexibility, and the courage to adapt your style. So based on everything we've discussed, here's a practical action plan broken down into steps to help you integrate these learnings into your own leadership journey. Step 1. Really cultivate self-assessment and situational awareness. First, get honest about understanding your natural tendencies. Reflect on your inherent traits, what comes easily to you. Are you naturally more introverted or extroverted? A big picture strategic thinker or someone who excels in the details? How do you handle pressure? Similarly, consider your preferred behavioral styles. Maybe using something like the managerial grid. In your mind, do you naturally gravitate towards getting the task done at all costs? Or are you more focused on keeping people happy and harmonious? Knowing your defaults, your comfort zones, your potential blind spots, that's the essential starting point for any intentional growth. Then, pair that self-awareness with a critical assessment of your current context. Is the environment you're operating in mostly stable and predictable right now, or is it rapidly changing and full of ambiguity? What are the specific demands of the situation you're facing? What's the complexity level of the task at hand? And, perhaps most importantly, what are the specific needs, the readiness levels, competence and commitment, and the expectations of your followers or team members in this particular situation? This combination of deep self awareness and keen situational analysis drawing directly from trait, behavioral, contingency, and situational theories is absolutely crucial for making informed, effective choices about which leadership approach to use. It's fundamentally about knowing yourself and knowing your environment accurately. Step 2. Actively develop behavioral flexibility. Embrace the core message from the behavioral era. Leadership behaviors can absolutely be learned and developed. This is incredibly empowering. Don't feel constrained or defined solely by your natural comfort zone or your inherent traits. Actively work on expanding your repertoire of leadership behaviors. Embrace the core message from the behavioral era. How? Well, if you know you're naturally very directive, consciously practice skills like active listening, asking powerful questions, coaching, and empowering others more often. If you tend to be overly relational and perhaps avoid conflict, deliberately practice setting clearer expectations, giving constructive feedback more directly, though still respectfully, and holding people accountable for performance when necessary. Embrace the core message from the behavioral era. Then, practice adapting your style consciously. Instead of defaulting to your preferred approach all the time, make a deliberate choice about the most appropriate style for the specific challenge, the specific person, or the specific team you're leading right now. As we discussed with situational leadership, this might mean being more directive and hands on in a crisis or when onboarding a new, inexperienced team member. But then you need to consciously shift to a more supportive, collaborative, or delegating style as the team matures, as individuals gain competence, or as the situation stabilizes. The goal isn't to just be one thing, the goal is to be able to choose to be many things, deliberately and effectively. Step 3. Intentionally cultivate values driven and transformative approaches. Think beyond just managing tasks, hitting deadlines, and controlling processes. That's the transactional base. And it's important, but often not enough. Consciously consider how you can truly inspire and motivate your team to achieve something greater, something beyond just their individual contributions or job descriptions. How? Work on articulating a clear, compelling, and meaningful vision for your team or project. Make sure it connects to shared aspirations and values. Encourage your team to see how their work contributes to that larger purpose, fostering that sense of transcending self-interest for the organization's or the mission's greater good that's the heart of transformational leadership. This means communicating the why behind the work, not just the what and how, and painting a vivid, attractive picture of a desirable future state you can achieve together. At the same time, make the growth and development of your team members a genuine priority. Practice being a servant leader. Actively listen to understand their individual needs, aspirations, and challenges. Work to remove obstacles that hinder their progress. Provide them with the resources, support, and opportunities they need to grow, both professionally and personally. By truly serving your team in this way, you build incredible trust, foster deep loyalty and engagement, and ultimately empower them to become more capable, more autonomous contributors, and potentially future leaders themselves. Step 4. Embrace modern complexity and foster distributed leadership. Internalize the idea that leadership in today's complex world is very often not just about the single person at the top of the hierarchy. Actively look for ways to foster shared, collective, and inclusive leadership within your sphere of influence. What does that mean practically? It means delegating not just routine tasks, but real responsibility and decision-making authority whenever appropriate. It means intentionally creating platforms and processes that value and solicit diverse perspectives and contributions from everyone on the team, regardless of their formal role or tenure. Create opportunities for informal leadership to emerge naturally, allowing expertise and initiative to lead the way rather than always relying on hierarchical position. Empower others to lead in their areas of strength. And adopt that whole system view we talked about with complexity leadership. Try to understand the intricate interactions and interdependencies within your team across departments and with the broader organizational environment. Leverage complexity principles to navigate uncertainty, focus on fostering adaptability, building resilient networks, enabling rapid information flow, and encouraging safe-to-fail experimentation, rather than trying to rigidly control every single outcome, which is often impossible anyway. This mindset shift embraces the non-linear, unpredictable nature of modern work and allows for more organic, resilient solutions to emerge from within the system. Step 5. Commit wholeheartedly to continuous learning and reflection. Remember the core challenge highlighted in the NHS example. The need to continuously evaluate which leadership theory or approach is most relevant and effective in your specific evolving context. This isn't a one-time diagnosis, it's an ongoing process. Leadership is not a destination you arrive at. It's an ongoing journey of learning, adaptation, and refinement. How do you stay on that journey? By making reflection a regular practice. After a significant project, a challenging meeting, or even just at the end of a week, take a few moments to ask yourself honestly, what went well in terms of my leadership approach? What could I have done differently or better? Which leadership styles or behaviors seemed most effective in that situation and why? Which were less effective? How do you stay on that journey? By making reflection a regular practice. After a significant project, a challenging meeting, or even just at the end of a week, take a few moments to ask yourself honestly. Crucially, actively seek feedback. Ask your team members, your peers, your own manager, maybe find a trusted mentor. Ask for specific examples of what you're doing well and where you could improve. Listen openly and non-defensively to their perspectives, even if it's difficult to hear sometimes. Be genuinely open to adjusting your approach based on the outcomes you're seeing and the feedback you receive. This continuous, iterative cycle of learning, applying, reflecting, and adjusting is how you truly grow as an adaptive, insightful, and increasingly effective leader, capable of navigating whatever challenges come your way.
That action plan is fantastic. It really helps make these rich historical and theoretical insights incredibly practical. Something you can start thinking about and applying in your daily life, starting today. It boils down to being self-aware, situationally aware, flexible, values-driven, system-minded, and above all, committed to continuous learning. This has been a deeply enriching deep dive, really made possible by the insights synthesized in resources like the 1 Hour Guide by Anil Nathu, Outro. Wow, what an incredible journey that was, tracing the evolution of leadership thinking over almost 2 centuries. From the almost mythical great man theories of the 19th century, through the practical focus on behaviors and the critical realization of situational adaptation, right up to the sophisticated insights of values-driven, authentic, inclusive, complex, and compassionate leadership today. It's clear that understanding this history offers really incredible perspective on what makes for effective leadership in our current world.
It really does. Examining this historical development, as Benmira and Agboola put it, provides that necessary perspective as well as context within which to appreciate the complexity of the subject. It shows us very clearly that there are no simple final answers, but rather this rich, evolving tapestry of understanding. The constant change in leadership theory itself perfectly mirrors the dynamism of the world we live in, doesn't it? It shows how our understanding of what effective leadership looks like must continually adapt to meet new challenges and leverage new opportunities.
So the final thought for you, our listener, what does this all mean for you? How will knowing this nuanced history of leadership theories, understanding the strengths and limitations of each perspective, from traits to transformation to complexity, how will that empower you to lead more effectively in your own context? How might it help you inspire those around you more authentically? And how can it equip you to better navigate the ever-changing, often challenging landscape of your own professional life? It's a really thought-provoking challenge, perhaps a new lens, to carry forward into every interaction, every decision, every leadership moment you encounter. Thank you so much for joining us today on this deep dive. Visit the 1 Hour Guide website for more business insights and practical guides. Let's learn and grow together.